All right, thank you so much, guys, for being here. I know lunch is coming up soon and everybody's hungry, so we're going to keep it really brief. My name is Ria Jung. I'm a Director of Digital Transformation for CACI. Just a little background on myself, been supporting primarily the DoD, but other federal agencies as well in digital transformation for over 20 years now. This is Nicole Hyder, who's my customer and my partner in crime. So we're excited to be here today. We presented at the GovAI conference last October, where we talked about an early stage prototype called Alera that we developed in order to start learning how to implement generative AI solutions. So we wanted to get out of just talking about generative AI use cases, get out of just experimenting it and using ChatGPT for personal use, and really figure out, all right, what does it take to build a production grade trusted generative AI application in our work environment. So with that, let me hand it over to Nicole to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for attending, and thank you, Modev, for having us today again. Again, my name is Nicole Hyder. I am the program manager for a newly modernized budget formulation tool for the entire Department of Defense, in which we use those tools to request our budget every year for the entire department. It's called the Next Generation Resource Management System. Just to give you a little bit of background, they had attempted to modernize that system maybe like 2 other times. And with Ria and team, again, I am her customer. With Ria and team, we were able to go ahead and get that completed. We do have a new modernized system, and everything that we're going to talk about today are the things that we're using using AI to help make sure that as we're continuing development, we're developing so that we can pivot in the future and not remodernize again, because I don't know if any of you have been through a modernization process before, but it is not easy because we were getting rid of some Oracle-based systems that had been in place for probably over 20 years. So there was a lot of things that we didn't know what to expect and what was gonna come out of that. However, we did find a very sweet spot. We got that baseline out. We did a few pilots, and by the 2023 President's budget, we had rolled the entire Department of Defense into this system, and we were collecting their data, and we actually submitted our budgets on time. So with that said, all the things that we're going to talk about today is how we're using AI early, right, before we get to FOC, final operating capability, so that we can, again, pivot into the future and not have to remodernize.
All right, thank you, Nicole. Okay, so I am going to set the stage with this quote. Generative AI has the potential to change the world in ways we can't even imagine. And I'm going to say, Nicole is part of the reason why we're here today. It's very much a mindset. We are running into a culture and a mindset where some people still fear AI. And so that was part of our journey that we're going to talk about a little bit today. But if you open the aperture and you're open to it, I know this morning we talked a lot about deepfakes and hallucinations and all the bad things that AI can do. But if you learn about it and you understand the possibilities, the use cases are endless, and it can really be transformative. So we wanted to do that, to start learning by doing. All right, so I know we've talked about generative AI. Sachin mentioned, had a session on it earlier today, but let's just do a refresher. What is generative AI? So generative AI is a subset of AI technology that generates content. Okay, so we're talking things like text, audio, images, video, code. If you unpack all of that, there's an endless range of content that can be generated. So you can have it translate from English to another language. You can have it translate code. You can have it summarize. You can ask it to write a children's story based on a topic that you give it, and then turn around and have it create the images to go with the stories in Disney style, right? So underneath of that are large language models, which are trained on an enormous amount of data, which is the internet, okay? So again, remember, keep in mind, whatever is in the internet, the AI is learning from it, and that's why we're reactively trying to remove bias and things like that. That all comes from what it was learning, and we created all that data. But with that being said, because it is learning on so much data, it's able to extract patterns in language And it's essentially just predicting the next word, one word at a time, because that's how it works. So here's an example. I love seeing examples of generative AI just because it sparks more ideas for me for how to use it. But the way it works is you give it simple prompts, and then within a few seconds, you click a button, and then it gives you a response. Okay, so here's an example. This is one that I like to use. Explain what AI is to a 10-year-old in 3 sentences. Now, most of us, if you're using ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, you kind of use it just like Google. You're just searching for information. But really, that's scratching the surface. It can do so much more. In this case, we're giving it a little bit more instructions. And so the output is, it's in speaking for 10-year-olds. It's a super smart computer that can learn, make decisions. And if you give it lots of examples, and it can understand patterns, right? So to go a little bit beyond this, in my role, I have to explain lots of complex concepts. So I tend to break things down. And so I always use this prompt, explain what AI is, whatever the topic is, to a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old. And then after that, I go back and I say, okay, give me more details. Now give me more details, elaborate on this. Because I do that all the time, I can now have a custom GPT. Has anybody created custom GPTs? Okay, great. So I have one called Brainy Breakdowns. Is it essentially, I tell it to give an explanation to 3 different audiences: a little child, a young adult, and then a career professional. And I tell it, okay, use 8th grade language only, use analogies, use examples, and bold key concepts, and also give me a list of additional concepts to explore, right? So that's my go-to GPT now for whenever I'm researching a topic. But to go beyond that, you can then, my husband said, hey, why don't you create that and have it automate into different posts? And now you can post every day a different topic, right? So you can start to see how you go beyond just using a large language model to hooking it into an automation underneath. Then that's when it's going to really become like agents and can do things for you instead of just creating content for you. All right, so that's all fun, but within the DoD, we wanted to figure out, all right, how do we actually apply this to practical use cases? So about a year ago, we developed a prototype tool called Alera. So let me hand it over to Nicole to kind of talk about that.
So Alera, my favorite topic to talk about these days. Before I go into Alera and what we've done with it, at the DoD, just like a lot of your agencies inside the local government and just abroad, cyber security is the top priority, and that is no different at the DoD because when we don't care about security or put the right things in place for security, we make ourselves vulnerable. And in our case, at the DoD, that puts our nation at risk. And that's no different in the budget world for the work that we're doing. And so Alera, is a large language model prototype that we've actually been using to learn how to, again, tie it back into NGRMS, that next generation resource management system, and how we can train it on the day-to-day practices that we have. So basically, we've loaded justification materials into it and asked it questions, doing things like asking it things that we already know the answer to, so we know where to fine-tune it. But Alera has been just the catapult of moving NGRMS in the direction that we want to go. Again, something that we can actually pivot into. Next chart, please. Okay, and so we have a vision for Alera. So we started out with a knowledge assistant. Again, we've loaded like the financial management regulation, which is all the rules for what we have to do as budget analysts to get our budget over to the president for his for approval. And so basically, again, we loaded that and we started asking it questions that, again, we've been doing this for between the 2 of us probably about 40 years altogether. So we have a lot of knowledge about how that budget is supposed to work. But we basically basically use it to help train the individuals, because we do have stakeholders. All of our end users that use NGRMS, Alera will become their personal assistant, and we're learning, how to train it to do that. We also have a data co-pilot that we've actually been demoing. That's what we demoed last October to you guys, or to the people that attended GovAI last October. And basically we taught it to, or asked it to do things like predicting, forecasting, writing queries that we could then potentially load into NGRMS. But the latest one, which is why I have these notes in front of me this morning, because I sent my last email this morning at 2 a.m. and I was working on just what this last thing that we're working on is writing assistant. I was writing the justification to make sure that when our president's budget for NGRMS and now Alera goes out the door, we get to keep our resources, and hopefully they'll give us some more resources. So I needed a strong justification. And so that's what I was up writing this morning, because we are in the middle right now today of a budget submission. And so that writing assistant will help us to build more, strengthen our justification submissions, help us to draft SOPs, help us to write better training materials for our stakeholders, and, just do all kinds of things, write white papers, whatever the case. But we're using the prototype to learn how to do that, so that we can then, you'll see as we continue to talk about this, the group of people that we're using to help take us in that direction. Next.
Thanks, Nicole. I think so. These three use case areas are very common and the most immediate use cases for generative AI across many organizations. So this is why we started diving into this. But using generative AI just out of the box is not helpful in the business area, because it knows nothing about your domain or your business. So yeah, it could make up stuff and give you some suggestions here and there, but everything's very generic, right? So you have to customize it to your domain. So now, in order for us to, sorry, I skipped a slide here.
No,
we're going to talk about a little bit first about dealing with how, if you were to start an AI initiative tomorrow, how would that look? We found that there were many people who didn't understand AI, who feared AI, who were skeptic about it. And so we thought, okay, there's no way we're going to be successful without changing the mindset and shifting the culture. So Nicole's going to talk a little bit about the approach we took with that.
Okay, so with NGRMS, remember I said that it was attempted 2 other times. And so there were people that were there before I got there that did not have confidence in the fact that something like NGRMS could be done. And so with the AI approach, we have leveraged the confidence that those people now have in me and the rest of the team. And we are using an AI strategy discovery. So basically, and some of you can probably relate to this, I was able to get 15 of my other colleagues, people who are probably up some mornings at 2 a.m. trying to get things done for Congress or whoever's asking questions of the DoD. I was able to get 15 of them in a room. These are all senior budget analysts that are non-supervisory, meaning they don't have any assistants. So everything that they do, everything that we do on our own. But we were able to get 15 of them into a room for 4 hours. And what we did in that strategy session was, talk to them. So some of the questions that we asked, and I wrote this down so that because I'm running off a little bit of sleep. So we first asked them, what did they know? Then we asked them, what did they think they know about AI? And then what they wanted to learn from the session. Rhea gave some ground rules. And basically she said to be encouraging and empowering, she said, if you don't agree with what someone says, don't say no, but you should always start every statement in this session with yes and. So that kind of got, set the stage for, just changing the mindset. And so basically we got them all together. We emphasized the human in the loop, because I'm saying to them, yes, I specialize in what I do for comptroller, but you guys are the institutional knowledge for your respective portfolios. It is humanly impossible for one person to know everything that you guys know. So that is giving them buy-in. Hey, if you don't help us do this, we're not going to be able to get it done. So that got them excited. I also talked to them about some of the pitfalls of AI early on. And again, trying to encourage them and let them know that, we're all on this journey. Yes, we are scared. I personally am a proud GG of 3. So when you start talking about how AI can harm kids, that's near and dear to me. And so we talked to them about biases. I described one of the first biases I experienced with Copilot. I knew that it would generate images, and so I gave it a description of just kind of my life, my journey. I said, create a picture of a woman who is interested in the stock market, who loves robots, who served time in the Army, and who was the captain of her basketball team. Every image that I got back, none of them looked like me. And so I'm like, wait, so I got to give it some more information. So I found my prompt. I found the word that I have to include to get those images that look like me, and my word is melanated. So I had to say, create a picture of a melanated woman, and I filled in all those blanks, and then I got these images. I'm talking to that because there are young people in your organization. There are some companies who are leveraging AI, for the wrong reasons. And so we wanted them to be aware that those things are out there. But again, making it, kind of hit home for them, because a lot of them have kids, and a lot of them are, are afraid, right? And so we talked to them about deep fakes. I use that same prompt and another software. Again, I use all free software, and created a picture that took a picture of my face out of my phone. I put it with another application that was free called Face Off, and I just showed them how easily I could create a deep fake. And so I showed them the images, again, keeping that in mind for just the incident that was mentioned this morning about an AI Zoom call that was all, fake. It was not real. We also, in the end, all of that, we got several use cases, right? Because we got them to change their mind and realize that that AI is their friend and is going to be their assistant, and just getting them into that mindset. So we walked away with a ton of use cases that we're, kind of still exploring, but at least we got those people in a room. They even named themselves the NGRMS chefs. So I think I called them the NGRMS strategy team, but we collectively, we use Copilot, in that room that day, and let them ask questions, just reintroducing them to what's there and being able to answer their questions. But most importantly, getting them to change their mindset about AI and not just focusing on their day-to-day work.
Thank you, Nicole. And I'll say, when we first started the workshop, the room was really quiet and serious. Yeah. And then by the time we were done, everybody was laughing and excited about AI. Yes. So, it doesn't take a lot. It just takes a little bit to start the conversation and to let people learn and experiment, yes, have some direct experience with it. Okay, so in the next couple slides, I'm just going to might get a little bit technical, but if you were to build a generative AI application, you have to be able to customize it to your business, right? So there are different ways to customize your generative AI application, or the large language models. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you might hear it called domain adaptation, right? So from the left to the right side is the lowest level of effort. On the left side is prompt engineering. And prompt engineering is really just within your prompt itself, you're giving it the more details, instructions, examples, whatever you can within the prompt itself. Now that's limited to whatever the context window can give you, can allow you, right? But prompt engineering is something that is, very easy to do. And essentially, when I was creating my custom GPT, that's essentially what I was doing, is just giving it additional carefully crafted instructions. The next layer is what we call retrieval augmented generation. If you have tons of documentation about your domain area, your business processes, definitions, taxonomies, whatever, white papers, things like that, and you want the AI to use that knowledge, you can essentially feed it all of that information. It's not changing the underlying model. It's just feeding it and actually it's extracting the relevant content and giving it to the prompt, including it as part of the prompt. Many organizations are pursuing this option now because it's the easiest way to do it, right? But it does take a little bit of work because you've got to have some kind of search tool or vector embeddings that convert your documents, your Word, your PDF files, your PowerPoint, whatever it is, into a vector format so that AI can parse it. The third is a little bit more advanced. You need a data scientist team. So we are also working with a team, an AI research team, where we're taking a pre-trained model, for example, like what's the underlying model on GPT-4, for example, Llama, and we are fine-tuning it, meaning we're teaching it more. We're teaching it specific tasks related to our business. We're teaching it knowledge related to our domain. That's going to be a little bit more. With that, you have to have essentially labeled data. So you can't just give it, a PDF document as is. You have to basically accumulate a lot of training data, and we're talking hundreds, thousands, millions of training data records in order to do this, which is why it's a lot more effort. Okay, but if you want to teach an LLM to do something, use a specific style, automate a specific task. For example, write from text to SQL against your own database, something like that. You'd want to go with fine tuning. So there are different pros and cons across these methods, and the ideal solution is a combination of all three. So with that, our tech approach is a 5-step approach: identifying the use cases and your success criteria, building the actual chat interface to the LLM. That's actually really, really simple. Customizing and testing and evaluating, that is the big lift. And then deploying. So you might look, if you're familiar with software development or developing a solution, that this might look somewhat similar to that, but the actual execution of customizing and testing a large language model, generative AI, is very different. And that's where it becomes very experimental, right? So with traditional automation, you might say, okay, you give it a requirement, they program it, you test it, it either works or it doesn't work. With generative AI, it works or it doesn't work, or it might not work well, or you might not trust it. How do you know if the knowledge behind it or the responses are correct? There's a lot more, and it's much deeper. So the evaluation testing process is very different. So we have, we have human evaluation, and then we've got the red team evaluations to test for things like security and bias and fairness and all that stuff. So that's all, very experimental, and everybody's kind of trying to come up with the right methodologies for that. So specifically, we're just going to touch on 2 initiatives to kind of expand upon the tech approach. We wanted generative AI to learn DoD budget taxonomy. The DoD has a gazillion acronyms and very rigorous process for budget formulation. They have an $800 billion annual budget. So you can imagine the scale of decision making and that goes through the workflow that goes with that, the hierarchy of budget. So what we did was, as Nicole mentioned, we took the financial management regulation document, which is couple thousand pages, essentially an FM manual for the DoD. Right. And in order to turn that into training data, we had to extract it. And that took a decent amount of time because it was not it's an unstructured format. The format was very inconsistent. We had our data scientists had to spend a lot of time extracting that data into what's called labeled data. So the format of input and output, essentially. You say, explain to me how a continuing resolution works. And then the output would be the result. So a lot of time was put into that. We also took a tabular data set, IT investments, that's more like an Excel format, right? And then you've got fiscal years across columns. We took that and we also tried to train it. what we found when we tested, you would think, okay, there's one record about NGRMS, it should be able to answer it exactly. Well, no, that's not how it works. Because there's only one record, the large language model is not able to extract patterns because it doesn't have enough data. You have one record, that's not going to be effective, right? So everybody thinks, oh, but the answer's right there in that one record. But that's not how large language models work. So you have to learn that. So we ended up having to augment the data. So we took that one record and we expanded it to many ways you can ask the same questions. We also used a large language model to generate synthetic training data based off of the original raw data set, right? So we went from a couple thousand records to 8,000 records, and then we used that to train. Now, testing and evaluation is painful. You cannot do the traditional human just test, does it work or does it not work? Because now you're reading, we had 125 standard prompts that we were using to evaluate. Every time we fine-tune the model, there's a human that's reading through the responses and judging and scoring whether that response looks correct. Okay, that sounds easy, but that's not easy. If you have to do that 125 times, however many times you fine-tune, and oh, by the way, that person has to be an expert in that data too. So you're not going to have that. So what we ended up doing also is exploring using an LLM, third-party LLM as a judge. So we used a third-party language model to compare a human-generated response with an LLM-generated response and scored it, and that worked very well. So that saved a huge amount of time. That it was on point. It gave us a score from 1 to 10 of how well it compared to the human-generated response. And then it gave us a description of why it scored a 7 out of 10. And it was on point. So that is a game changer. So we're using LLM to automate something, but we're also using LLMs within the process itself to generate more training data and then to evaluate itself. So it sounds quite interesting, but very effective. So all these techniques we're kind of exploring, and we're learning one by different techniques, what's going to work better, different ways of extracting data that AI can learn better and more accurate, produce more accurate results. And then the other one that we'll wrap up with is generative AI as a writing assistant to strengthen budget justification narratives. So Nicole will talk this one.
Yeah, the very thing that had me up till 2 a.m. this morning. Yeah, that tied in very well. I didn't even know that would happen. Before I get into this chart, though, I want to just state that throughout the morning, with everyone who's actually been on this stage, I've heard the same statement with there being a lack of resources in terms of getting started with AI. So that thing also exists in the DoD. We just call it resourcing prioritization. But it's the same thing. It's a matter of getting prioritized to get the money to do the things that you need. As a program manager for NGRMS, coming through the door back in 2019, my anniversary is a week and a half from now. Coming in the door, I said to the team, Ria and team, with NGRMS, I want all the bells and whistles. And they heard me, and they went back to their places and they did the different things that they needed to do. So today, again, I was talking about earlier how the DoD, we have to take security, make that a whole priority. So right now today, we do not have a sandbox that is in the right place for us to really, really use our real data to train a model. However, Ria and I have not sat by the sidelines because of that limitation, going back to the not now, not we can't, but what can we do based on the things that we have? So in channeling our internal alchemy results of reading that book, the things that you have everything that you need to get to where you're going, you just have to be creative and come up with how to do that. And so one of the ways that Ria and team has done that is by partnering with IBM with the Watson X application. So with me giving them my requirements and saying, hey, this is what we need to do, they took it upon themselves to go out and partner with someone who had a capability, IBM, that was for a production grade large language model, which was to accommodate what I need for NGRMS. They are experimenting, just learning together. They have the use case, IBM has the tool, and they were able to come up with a way to start to look at how we can write those justifications that are strengthened using using AI and the large language model. So they're again comparing what a human would write versus what the AI would write, giving it a score, as Rhea stated in the other statement. There's, this has all been an iterative process, but we have an early start because we didn't just sit by the sidelines and say, hey, we don't have a sandbox, so we can't do anything. So we've been using every resource that we have or every way to learn. Being here today, preparing for this, forced us to learn some other things. And so that's kind of the approach. Again, we don't have extra money. Everybody wants AI. They want it in that stage where, it's fully functional and they're fully using it, but the resources just aren't there. So from a DoD to local government to wide government overall, I would say to you, just start somewhere and do something, and don't let the resources or the lack thereof stop you.
So this is the quote we're going to end with. Dream big, start small, but most of all, start. Okay.
Yes.
So I know everybody talked about hallucinations and deepfakes and all the bad things, but we want to look at the possibilities because we see transformation can happen if you embrace this technology and look at the possibilities. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rhea and Nicole. Thank you so much.